You know that feeling, right? When you're trying to get ahead, maybe launch something new or navigate a tricky situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
What if there was like a really old guide that could give you a genuine strategic edge?
Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today. We're doing a deep dive into Sun Tzu's The Art of War. It's amazing how this text still offers such powerful insights.
And not just for generals, right? For, well, anyone trying to master strategy.
Exactly. In work, in life, whatever.
So you've brought your sources and you're looking to understand the real core of this ancient wisdom, maybe see how it applies to, well, whatever your interest is. Our mission today is to explore Sun Tzu himself, his impact, and really unpack that first chapter, laying clans.
And maybe see what we can pull out of it.
Yeah.
Just for context, Sun Tzu probably lived during the Warring States period in China,
Yeah.
a really turbulent time.
Constant conflict.
hmm And figures like the kings of Wu, they're part of the background for how these ideas came about.
Right. So we'll try to piece together what history tells us about Sun Tzu, look at how his ideas spread, and then, yeah, get right into chapter one.
We'll also give a little peek at chapter 2. And don't worry, we'll keep things clear, connect the old ideas to, today's world.
Okay, sounds good. So let's start with a man, Sun Tzu. Who exactly was he? Is he even real?
Ah, the big question. Well, the best early account we have is from Sima Qian. He was a historian, Han Dynasty.
Okay.
In his big work, The Records of the Grand Historian, he talks about a Sun Wu from the state of Qi, but working for Wu.
And when was this, roughly?
Late 6th, early 5th century BC, so maybe around 512 to 496 BC, serving King Holu of Wu.
And he helped Wu win some major victory.
Big time, especially against the state of Chu. They even captured Chu's capital, Ying. Sima Qian credits Sun Wu with being key to that.
Okay, and isn't there that really famous story, the one with the king's concubines? Always struck me as a bit dramatic.
Huh. It is definitely memorable. As the story goes, King Holu was intrigued by Sun Tzu's ideas, but maybe a little doubtful. Wanted proof.
So he said, okay, drill my harem.
Pretty much. Sun Tzu organizes them into two groups, appoints the king's favorites as leaders, then he explains the commands turn left, turn right, basic stuff.
And it didn't go well initially.
Not at all. He gives the order, right turn, and they just burst out laughing.
Oh, dear.
But Sun Tzu's reaction is interesting. He says, okay, if the orders aren't clear, if they aren't understood, that's on the general. My fault.
Fair enough.
So he explains everything again very clearly, then gives the order, left turn, and,
More laughter.
yep, more laughter. This time, though, Sun Tzu says, okay, orders are clear, but they're not being obeyed. Now, the fault lies with the officers, the leaders he appointed.
And this is where it gets intense, right?
Right. He orders the execution of the two leaders, the king's favorites.
Wow. Did the king try to stop him?
Oh, absolutely. King Holu pleaded with him, apparently. I know you're capable, but I'll lose my appetite without these two. But Sun Tzu holds firm.
He actually went through with it.
He did. Argued that on the battlefield, the general's orders are absolute, even the sovereign's commands are secondary sometimes. He executed them, appointed new leaders.
And then?
Then he ran the drill again. Perfect execution. Absolute precision, total silence. Afterward, he tells the king, basically, your troops are ready, they can go through fire and water.
That is quite a lesson. Really hammers home the need for clear communication, but also, wow, the general's authority.
And discipline. Unwavering discipline, even when it's painful. You can see how that translates, can't you?
For sure. In any organization, really. But Sima Qian mentions other things, too, not just that story.
Oh, yeah. He talks about Sun Tzu advising King Holu against attacking Ying right after capturing another city, Shu.
Why? Momentum seems good.
Sun Wu pointed out the army was exhausted. Bad timing. It shows strategic patience, not just aggression. Good. Later, he and another advisor, Wu Yuan, suggested building alliances with other states, Tang and Sai, before the big push against Chu. King Holu listened, and it worked. So it shows broader strategic thinking.
Okay, so Sima Qian definitely paints a picture of a real influential military advisor. But you mentioned skepticism. Where does that come from?
The main thing is, he's not mentioned in the Sochuan,
Which is?
a really detailed historical record from that same period. Very influential. And scholars like Ye Xuixin point out, look, that Sichuan mentions loads of people, even minor figures.
So why not Sun Wu if he was so important?
Exactly. It's a noticeable silence. It makes you wonder.
That is a fair point. So how do people counter that? How do we reconcile the silence with Sima Qian's story?
Well, there were a few arguments. One is that sophisticated forgery wasn't as common back then as it became later, so faking such a detailed account so early seems less likely.
Okay. What else?
The text itself,
Yeah.
The Art of War, it feels practical,
Uh,
like it's written by someone who's actually done this stuff, full of insights that seem grounded in real experience, not just theory.
Distilled from personal observation, as some commentators say.
Precisely. It has that ring of authenticity. Plus, generations of top Chinese generals took his maxims seriously, applied them. That suggests they saw real value, likely from a real source.
Okay. And is there anything in the book that gives clues?
Yes, actually, this is quite interesting. The text talks quite a bit about the rivalry between Wu and the state of Yu.
Okay.
It even mentions Yu sometimes having more troops than Wu, and this anecdote about soldiers from Wu and Yu helping each other in a storm despite being enemies.
So it focuses more on you than Chu, the enemy from the earlier stories.
Exactly. Chu, who is the main enemy in Sima Qian's account of Sun Wu helping King Holu early on, isn't even mentioned in the 13 chapters, but Yu is.
What's that imply then about the timing?
It suggests the book might have been written or at least compiled a bit later than Sima Qian's timeline, more during the period when Wu and Yu were the main rivals.
So maybe after the big campaigns against Chu?
Possibly. Some suggest maybe 505 to 496 BC, kind of a lull after the Chu Wars but before King Holu died, or maybe even later during peak Wu-Yu conflict like 496, 494, or 482, 473 BC.
King Holu died in 496 BC, right?
Right. So if it was written for him, as some believe, it likely fits into that earlier 505, 496 window. It complicates Sima Qian's exact dating a bit.
So the exact history is murky, but the book itself.
The book itself was definitely real and known by Sima Qian's time, and it was hugely influential. That's the key takeaway, really.
And didn't someone famous write a commentary on it later?
Yes. Cao Cao, also known as Wei Wuti, a major figure himself around the 3rd century AD, he wrote a preface and commentary.
What did he think of it?
He thought it was the profoundest work on war ever written. He really admired Summitz's focus on careful planning, deliberation before acting.
Planning again.
Absolutely. And also rapidity when needed, clarity of thought, strategic depth. Cao Cao felt many people just focused on the tactics but missed the bigger picture, the essential purport, as he put it.
He thought people were missing the point.
Kind of, missing the deep strategy behind the specific advice. He also believed the book was written for King Holu, based on some internal clues.
Okay. So we have this historically debated figure, Sun Tzu, but this undeniably influential text, The Art of War. Let's get into that text. Chapter 1, Laying Plans. What's the big idea here for our listeners?
Right. Chapter 1 is all about the prep work, the thinking, the analysis, the planning you do before you even think about making a move, before any conflict starts.
It's foundation setting.
Totally. Sun Tzu basically argues that victory isn't won on the battlefield itself, it's won beforehand through this careful calculation.
And the core of this calculation is the 5 constant factors, isn't it? What are they?
Yes, exactly. 5 fundamental things you absolutely have to consider. The first is 1, the moral law.
Moral law. Sounds philosophical.
It's less about ethics in our sense and more about the harmony between the ruler and the people. Are they on the same page? Do people trust the leader enough to follow them into danger?
Ah, so like leadership buy-in, shared vision, trust.
Precisely. For listeners, think company culture, employee morale. Do people believe in the mission? That's the moral law in action today. If they do, they'll stick with you through tough times.
Makes sense. If the foundation's strong, you can weather storms. Okay, factor 2.
Second is 2, heaven. This is about the natural environment, the conditions you can't control. Night and day, cold and heat, times and seasons, weather patterns.
So the external context.
Yeah, the broader operating environment. For you listening, this could be market conditions, tech trends, regulatory changes, things like that. You need to understand and adapt to these external forces, just like a general needs to account for the weather.
Right, you can't ignore the climate you're working in. Okay, third factor.
3, Earth. This is the geography, the physical landscape. Distances, terrain, is it open ground, narrow passes, dangerous? What are the chances of survival based on where you are?
So understanding your literal or metaphorical ground, your operational space.
Exactly. The physical or digital landscape you're navigating. What are the constraints, the opportunities presented by the Earth?
Okay, moral law, heaven, earth, people, environment, place. What's number 4?
Number 4 is 4, the commander, the leader. Sun Tzu lists 5 key virtues: Wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness.
Wisdom, sincerity, benevolence.
Caring, yep, caring for your people. Plus, courage to make tough calls and strictness to maintain order and discipline. These are vital for good planning and execution.
Seems like timeless leadership advice.
Very much so. Relevant whether you're a CEO, a team lead, or just leading yourself towards a personal goal.
Okay, and the fifth factor.
The last one is 5. Method and discipline. This covers the nitty-gritty of organization, how the Army is structured, ranks, subdivisions. Also, logistics supply lines, keeping the roads open, and controlling costs, military spending.
So structure, process, resources.
Pretty much. For
Yeah.
modern use. Organizational structure, project management, supply chains, financial planning, resource allocation, even personal budgeting fits here, really.
Wow. So those 5: moral law, heaven, earth, commander, method, and discipline. Sun Tzu says understanding these is key.
Absolutely critical. He puts it bluntly. He who knows them will be victorious. He who knows them not will fail. Simple as that.
Strong words.
And these 5 factors become the basis for comparing yourself to your opponent. This leads to the next step, the 7 considerations.
Okay, so you use the 5 factors to ask 7 questions.
Sort of. There's 7 points of comparison derived from those 5 factors to figure out who has the advantage before anything happens. It's like a pregame analysis checklist.
Oh, wait, let's hear the 7 considerations.
Okay, number 1. Which ruler has the moral law? Who has that stronger connection with their people?
Got it.
Which general has more ability? Who's the better leader based on those 5 virtues? 3. Who has the advantage when it comes to heaven and earth, the environment, the geography?
Okay, leadership, environment.
4. On which side is discipline more rigorously enforced? Who's got better order, follows the rules more strictly?
Discipline again, like Chow Tao punishing himself for the horse stepping on crops.
Exactly. That kind of commitment. Then, 5. Which army is stronger? Not just numbers, but morale, physical condition, esprit de corps, and maybe sheer size, too.
Morale and muscle.
6. Which side has better trained officers and men? Who's more proficient, more prepared? And finally, 7. In which army is there greater consistency in rewards and punishments? Is it fair, predictable?
So answering those 7 honestly gives you a prediction.
That's the idea. Sun Tzu says, by attention to this point, I can foresee who is likely to win or lose. It's all about that rigorous, objective assessment of both sides.
It's incredibly analytical for something so ancient.
It really is. But he adds a crucial caveat. These plans aren't rigid.
Ah.
He says, according as circumstances are favorable, one should modify one's plans. You have to adapt.
Right, like that saying, no plan survives contact with the enemy.
Very similar. The Duke of Wellington said something like, his plans depended entirely on what Napoleon did. Sun Tzu understood things change, you need flexibility. Don't just blindly follow the initial plan if the situation shifts.
So chapter 1 is really about deep preparation, understanding all the angles, but also being ready to adapt.
That's the heart of it. Victory comes from lots of calculation beforehand. Defeat comes from little, or as he says, how much more, no calculation at all.
It's really striking how this doesn't just feel like military advice. How can listeners connect this laying plans chapter to their world today?
Oh, the parallels are everywhere. That moral law, that's your company culture, employee engagement, customer trust built on values. Heaven and earth, that's market analysis, tech disruption, the competitive landscape, regulatory environments, even the physical location of your business.
The external factors.
Exactly. The commander's virtues. Straight-up leadership qualities for anyone in charge, CEO, manager, even just managing your own life goals. Wisdom, integrity, courage,
Timeless stuff.
and method and discipline.
Yeah.
That's your org chart, your project management tools like Agile or Scrum, your financial controls, supply chain logistics, even your personal habits and routines.
And the 7 considerations, like a checklist for competitors.
Absolutely. Think of it as a framework for competitive analysis, like a SWOT analysis. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, or for risk assessment before a big project.
Okay.
And that point about adapting to circumstances, that's agility, pivoting, being flexible, crucial in today's fast-changing world.
And the core idea of calculation, it's due diligence, market research, financial modeling, basically thinking carefully before you leap into any major undertaking. It really shifts the focus, doesn't it? Away from just reacting towards proactive, thoughtful preparation.
Exactly. Massively increases your odds of success by doing the hard thinking up front.
Okay, before we wrap this part up, you mentioned a preview of Chapter 2, Waging War. Sounds like it gets into the fighting.
You'd think so from the title, wouldn't you? But actually, Chapter 2 is surprisingly focused on the cost of war, the economics of it,
Really? Not tactics.
not primarily. Sun Tzu goes into detail about the resources needed: chariots, soldiers, supplies, the daily cash burn to keep an army going.
So it's about the logistics and the financial drain.
Yes, and a big warning against letting wars drag on. He argues that prolonged campaigns dull the soldiers' fighting spirit, wear out weapons, and crucially exhaust the state's treasury.
Which makes you vulnerable.
Precisely. It drains your resources and opens the door for rivals to take advantage of your weakness.
Makes sense. Long wars are incredibly costly, even for the winner.
Right. And he has this great line we'll unpack more next time. Cleverness has never been seen associated with long delays. He's saying, yeah, being too hasty is dumb, but letting things drag on is even worse because of the strain it puts on everyone. It's a very practical, almost economic look at conflict.
Interesting. So chapter 2 is less about fighting and more about affording the fight.
In large part, yes. The sustainability of conflict.
Well, this has been fascinating, really digging into Sun Tzu's background or what we know of it, and especially chapter 1, laying plans. It's incredible how those principles, planning, knowing the factors, adapting, still resonate so strongly.
You really do. It shows why understanding foundational texts like this helps you be, well, truly well-informed.
Absolutely. And it leaves us with a thought, doesn't it, for everyone listening? Given Sun Tzu's intense focus on planning before acting, where's one area in your life, work, personal goals, whatever, where maybe a bit more of that upfront strategic thinking could make a real difference in the outcome?
That's a great question to reflect on. Take that chapter 1 thinking and apply it somewhere specific.
It's definitely food for thought. Maybe even reread chapter 1 with that question in mind. And make sure to join us next time as we dive into chapter 2 and that surprising economic angle on waging war.
Looking forward to it.
This has been a deep dive, giving you the insights you need to be well informed.